Ronald Reagan is the only president in history to serve 2 full terms without his party ever controlling the House of Representatives. But he's one of the most transformative presidents in American history at the same time. How did he pull that off? The transformative nature of Reagan's presidency comes down to his economic agenda, Reaganomics, which was defined by low taxes, deregulation, and reducing welfare. Reagan's Republican Party did control the Senate for 6 of his 8 years in office, and he was able to get enough House Democrats on board for his domestic initiatives because Democrats broadly supported deregulation anyway. House Democratic leadership made a big political miscalculation on his tax cuts, and many conservative Democrats in the lower chamber supported his welfare cuts. Deregulation had already been championed by Democrats in the 1970s under Jimmy Carter, who deregulated the brewing, airline, and trucking industries. Reagan just turned that initiative towards the banks, and a signature deregulatory bill was the Garn-St. Germain Depository Institutions Act of 1982, which reduced restrictions on loans banks could issue, allowed adjustable interest rates, and expanded where banks could invest their money. It passed the House by a margin of 272 to 91, with Chuck Schumer and Steny Hoyer as its primary champions. So while deregulation is associated with Reaganomics, it was actually just a bipartisan consensus that would have applied to any president during that time. Reagan's historic tax cuts were passed with 2 bills, one in 1981 and the other in 1986, which eventually brought the top marginal rate from 70% down to 29%. This passed because Democratic House Speaker Tip O'Neill, who was old enough to remember when Harry Truman shockingly won election in 1948 by successfully shifting all the blame for the post-war economic struggles to the Republican Congress that wasn't doing anything, feared Reagan would get away with the same thing in 1981. The wildly popular great communicator, who won a landslide election in 1980, was already going across the country to blame obstructionist Democrats in Congress for the economic troubles of the time, so O'Neill made the political calculation to bring the tax cuts to the floor for a vote, and if they passed, Reagan would then have to own whatever economy came from that. It worked for O'Neill for a short time. Reagan was blamed for the spike in inflation in 1982, and Dems increased their majority in midterms that year, forcing Reagan to compromise and bring taxes slightly back up in 1983 and compromise on his plans to reform Social Security that same year. However, the economy had a dramatic turnaround, helping Reagan to a landslide 1984 re-election, which resulted in O'Neill making the same calculation in 1986 that he made in 1981 with Reagan's next round of tax cuts. This calculation also spilled over to cutting welfare. Reagan's Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1981 cut Pell Grants, restricted who would be eligible for food stamps and family assistance, and gave states more flexibility in how they issued benefits. If O'Neill didn't bring this bill to the floor, the obstructionist label would have been worse since it would have resulted in a government shutdown. Also during this time, there were roughly 50 conservative Democrats who supported welfare cuts, effectively giving Reagan the House majority here. Known as Bullweevil Democrats and primarily traditional Southern Democrats, this group had been a key block of the conservative coalition to obstruct liberal initiatives by the Democratic Party since Franklin D. Roosevelt. Reagan was also able to promise goodies in each of these Democrats' districts and pledged not to campaign against any of them if they supported his agenda.